What's up, everyone? It's Casey from Endear, and in this video, I'm going to talk about a new concept I've been diving into with a lot of my clients that I'm loosely calling the retail sales cycle. Now, what this is it's really like my response to the effort and energy that goes into the customer journey, as a lot of people will refer to it. But the reason I hate the word journey is because it feels like you have no control, like your customer is just on this path, maybe with a machete, cutting their way through, trying to find the products that they really want. So what this retail sales cycle instead represents is how can a retail sales team step into this customer journey at the right moment to help guide that customer to where they want to go, or really where we want them to end up. So let's dive into exactly what that means, how it's different from traditional sales, and why there's really, not a lot of educational content out there about this stuff right now. And finally, at the end, I'll share some real life examples from brands that I've worked with at Endear that should help you start thinking about ways you can improve your brand's retail sales cycle. So to really start talking about this concept of a retail sales cycle specifically, we need to first talk about what a non-retail or regular sales cycle would look like and compare that to the retail world. So I've pulled up two funnels here on the screen, and you'll see that they're labeled B2B and B2C. Except in wholesale or other rare cases, retail is primarily a B2C or business to consumer sales process. In other words, you sell to an individual person. On the flip side is B2B or business to business sales, which is exactly what it sounds like and is what most people would think of as traditional sales. Salespeople, just like myself, sitting behind a computer, sending emails, making our calls, or walking into storefronts and offices, trying to sell their product to that service or business. And for decades, a ton of resources, research, and money have gone into perfecting that process, that B2B process that we see here. CRMs, or customer relationship management platforms, built for businesses to power their sales team's process, like Salesforce or HubSpot, to name a few that you might be familiar with, are worth billions of dollars and implemented at every single company with a B2B sales funnel. So how does this all come back to retail processes? Well, when I started with Endear 4 years ago, I scoured the internet for information about retail sales and CRMs in the retail space. And to be quite honest, there wasn't much to be found. And the reason why is because when you're selling to this individual consumer, the payoff just isn't as high. You're not working towards a big contract signing and closing that deal. So the process itself has largely gotten overlooked. So B2C companies like retailers then focused all of their efforts on acquisition and marketing, with the thought being, if we could just get them in the door, we've got them for life. But as many brands are finding out now, customers aren't loyal to brands or products. They're loyal to people and great service. So as soon as it became easy for these customers to jump ship to the cheaper or the more in vogue brand, they did. And now, thankfully, retailers have come around and have started placing a renewed focus on building up their customer relationships, which leads to the entire reason I'm making this video today, which is to tell you the best way I have found to do this. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what each of these processes looks like in reality. Now, for both of these funnels, the awareness stage is largely going to be marketing, right? This is going to be marketing teams on both ends that are bringing people into the awareness stage and pushing them into the interest stage. This is where we as salespeople are going to start to reach out to you, approach you, and sort of try to turn that interest into consideration, or in the retail world here, into desire to actually make that purchase and really want that item and not just be interested in it. Now, this is where I have a bit of a bone to pick with the current state of affairs. We go straight from desire to action, and there's just nothing left in this retail B2C sales funnel as far as like the current state of what we talk about here. Now, in the B2B world, we have all of these stages down here. We have intent, we have evaluation, and then we finally have this buying stage. And there's so much that is going on here from a salesperson's perspective. So the question then becomes, what does this look like for a retail world? What should the bottom of the funnel look like? So let's first talk a little bit about what we can take from the B2B world and actually use in our B2C world. Now, at the top of the funnel here, when customers are a little bit less engaged, sales teams are going to have a lot of automation and efficiency going into their process, because at this level, you're really doing a lot of fishing, right? There's a lot of contacts coming into this stage, but not a lot are actually going to make it into the next stage. So we don't want to waste too much time on any specific contact. The further you get down the funnel, the more intention and purpose is going to go into each customer that's making it to each stage. By the time that you reach this stage of intent or evaluation, which in the B2B world we'd call opportunity or qualified lead, everything is going to be one-on-one and hyper-personal. A lot of businesses even have scoring mechanisms within each of these stages that are also going to dictate the level of effort that's being put in to each individual lead. The number one takeaway that retail sales should get here is the intentional defining of the characteristics of a person at each stage and the grouping of them into buckets. Now let's pivot back to the B2C funnel really quick here and think about why the B2B funnel won't work for exactly what we want to do in B2C. The main reason is really in how this stage is happening. What is happening right here? In the B2C world, this action is one singular purchase. And in reality, what we really want is this customer to end up back in our interest or desire area again. We want to get them back into this funnel over and over and over again. That's really our goal here. That's not the goal again in the B2B world. In the B2B world, we're getting them to this final stage of buy, and our job as a salesperson is largely done at that point in time. Another big difference here is going to be time. In this B2B world, this process could be months, it could be years, depending on some of the businesses here that we're talking about. In the B2C world, in some cases, and in fact, in a lot of cases, if you think about the real world case of a customer seeing your brand walking down the street for the first time, walking into your store and buying, they have gone through awareness, interest, desire, and that action to buy all within maybe 30 minutes. So the differences there are just, it cannot be ignored. The timeline is a huge, huge thing here, because one thing we're going to come back to again and again is you need efficiency in this retail sales cycle. You're not getting that big payoff at the end. So you need to combine sort of multiple payoffs of a smaller scale here. And the way that you do that is with speed and efficiency. So instead, if we try to think about what that bottom phase of action looks like in the retail world, it is more of a cycle. The best way to think of the job of the retail salesperson is to essentially make sure customers don't get stuck, for a lack of better words, in one of these different parts of the cycle. I'm sure your marketing teams have plenty of automation set up to guide that customer through the perfect customer journey. But some customers will get lost. Let's be honest, right? We work with them every day. We know that that is the truth. So let's just take a moment to think about where each one of these stages might pop up in the real world and how that sales associate can sort of help guide that customer through that stage. So starting with interest here at the top, right? Grabbing this right from our funnel here. So interest and desire, part of the cycle down here where sales kicks off. So customer interest here could be defined in a number of ways. I would argue in a lot of retail cases, with the exception being maybe very, very expensive products, it is the marketing team's responsibility to get a customer to their first store visit and or online conversion. Those two actions, I think, are the main thing that identify as what moves a customer from awareness and into legitimate interest. This gets interesting because when we think about reality, in almost both of those scenarios, the customer, if we're just in a funnel, is getting all the way down to action right away, right? They are making that purchase. They walked into the store. They came to the website and converted. They're getting all the way down the funnel. So we'd have nothing left to do in the funnel world. But that's why in this retail sales cycle world, the customer can sort of enter this funnel at the stage of happiness, right? They're coming in at interest, but they're really getting to desire and purchase right away without a ton of effort from the salesperson. They're doing their job in store that day, but they're not putting in, a ton of outbound or proactive effort. They're jumping right into the cycle here at happiness, which is why when we get to it later, happiness is one of the most important stages in this cycle to get that customer through. You could also probably call this stage satisfaction. So I personally will place so much focus on these later stages here in the process because that is where we're going to see customers fall off and never come back to our brand most often. Now, desire, if we move to this next stage in the cycle here, desire and interest are often happening again within a very close window to each other. And so we're going to land relatively into that same bucket for a lot of brands. What I would say is important, taking a note from the B2B world, again, is to identify actions that a customer can take, like booking an appointment or filling out a different type of form or survey, maybe replying to one of your messages, clicking on a marketing email, basically anything else besides buying that this customer could do to indicate interest to me, to put me into a bucket that then indicates a different strategy, a new way for that salesperson to reach out to me. Creating these different actions and points that can help define the difference from interest to desire is a really, really strong way to keep your retail sales team focusing on the customers that are actually ready to buy and are right there at the finish line. Moving into purchase here, possibly the most obvious part of the cycle and by far the most important. When this happens in a store setting, the salesperson's part in that process is obvious. So I want to share a specific example from a client I'm working with on how a salesperson can impact this decision in an online sales setting. So this customer has implemented a find in store feature on their website that connects the shopper with their nearest store to ask any final questions and take any uncertainty out of the process. Customers love BOPIS. They love it even more when they're connected directly with the person who is setting that product aside for them to pick up in store. Other interesting options I've seen here are implementing specific online sales chat mechanisms. And I say sales chat specifically to differ from like an customer support. You really want that customer to feel like they are buying and they're asking buying questions in that moment. Some ways to do that would be putting it on the product page or putting it somewhere where a customer would typically be looking to purchase an item rather than a support related chat. Now let's move into happiness. With the exception of purchase, this is definitely the second most important stage to focus our efforts in the cycle. Think about the number of customers who reach out to your support team or come back to the store because they're unhappy with the way something fit or the way it wore, or maybe they got home and they just weren't feeling it anymore. Now think about how many of those customers have those exact same issues but never say a word about it, and you just never hear from them again. Making sure that your customers are satisfied after their purchase, especially a first or second purchase, is so important. It can't be understated, and it can be accomplished so easily by simply just touching base with the customer after every purchase, and not to ask them to buy again, but genuinely making sure they're enjoying that last purchase and fixing the issue if they aren't. Remember, we aren't worried about one final purchase in the retail world. We want to push them through that cycle. We want to keep that cycle moving. And finally, let's move to the last stage of re-engage. As people who work knee-deep in our company's marketing and sales outreach and customer support interactions every single day, it can be hard to believe that our customers forget about us. We could completely rock their world throughout every single one of these stages, but people are busy. One of the biggest takeaways from working with clients at Endear is how the smallest personal note to customers that we haven't seen in a while can have such a huge impact. And if we've done our job right through all of these other stages, especially the happiness stage and satisfaction stage, getting a customer through re-engage and back into interest and desire should be a breeze. Think about that one customer you can send a message to at any time and you know they will come in and buy something. Let's create more customers like that. When I break things down like this with brands I work with, I found it is so much easier to start thinking about how their sales teams can step in at every stage of their cycle here. So I want to round this video out by giving you some tips that you can take into defining your brand's retail sales cycle. So first and foremost, you really want to sit down and think about your current sales ceremony, sales cycle, sales process, whatever you call it today. Think about how that exists and how that works today, and be really honest with yourself. Who are your customers? Who is your team? What motivates both groups of these people? Really defining those things is going to help you understand how to apply these concepts to the existing process that's already there. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You want to figure out how to make a cycle that fits the existing journey that's already there for you. And really the goal in going through that exercise of thinking about your current sales process today is to come up with your engagement moments or buckets. And you want to be really specific with these. You want them to be characteristics that you can define with data and you can be efficient with. Here are some great examples of buckets and moments that we have seen proven success time and time again across many brands across Endear. The first one's going to sound simple, but post-purchase follow-ups and thank yous at the 2 to 3 day mark from their purchase are incredibly effective with driving customer retention and replies and all of those good numbers that we love to see. Now, for any stores with big online presences, looking for customers in your e-com database who live near your store but have never shopped in your store is a great way to build the connection with the brand by inviting them in. Customers who shop in store have a way higher average order value and come back way more often than those who are only e-com customers. Another good example of bucketing or segmenting here is rather than just reaching out to every customer when you have a markdown or new product hits the inventory, grouping customers by complementary products that they've purchased. So for example, this jacket goes great with that pair of jeans. That is going to help make that message so much more intentional and so effective. And now every single one of these strategies I just talked about should be even grouped further by a customer's total number of orders or total spend or order location. All of them can be bucketed and segmented down further, which is what helps you reach that personalization with scale. And on that note, the final and most important piece of all of this. Before I end this video, I have to talk a little bit about why it is so important to set your retail sales process up to scale. If you have any level of retail experience and you just listen to all of these strategies, everything I just talked about in this video, you're probably saying to yourself, yeah, that sounds awesome, but we would never be able to pull that off on top of everything else we're doing for every single customer that walks into our store every day. That is exactly why it is so important that you make use of the tools available to help you use your customer data and build these buckets and even automatically trigger these messages to go out for you on your behalf in some cases. So in my next video I make, I'm gonna dive deeper into how to use a retail CRM and how to really set it up in a way that it is driving revenue and driving value for your brand and not just another headache that you need to think about and worry about maintaining and keeping up to date at all times. But finally, before I go, thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is one of my first videos diving into more of the educational sales side of retail. So if you like this video and if you have any questions about any of the things that I talked about in this video, please feel free to add me on LinkedIn, Casey Drake, shoot me a DM, or even email me, casey@endearhq.com. I love talking about this stuff and I'd love to talk to you about it. So I will see you in the next video.